In our previous installment, we discussed the importance of an off-season for what you would probably call more conventional sport athletes. So you're looking at your high school and college athletes playing things like football, basketball. We talked about wrestling a little bit, but that also carries in other sports, volleyball, baseball, whatever you want to call. This time we're going to focus on CrossFit in a vacuum, talk about the importance of an off-season for a CrossFit athlete. And I think the first thing we need to clarify is, what is the in-season for a CrossFit athlete? Because it's going to depend on the athlete, and whenever CrossFit as a corporation kind of always has its season in flux, it is hard to dictate when your season starts and ends. So Curt, how do you want to discern where a CrossFit athlete's season starts and ends?
I would say you have to go into the athlete.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's what competition, like you said, as of now, the way CrossFit is, it is in, I don't know, chaos, shambles. Who knows what to call it. But you have the World Fitness Project, you have Wadapalooza, you have all these big competitions, and they're all different times of the year. So you're going to have to end up picking one and maybe see how those lay out. Like, maybe you do Wadapalooza, and the World Fitness is kind of going on right now, right? Mm-hmm. So those could probably be like, oh, your season's February to May, and then after that, that's your off season. I don't exactly know how the World Fitness Project lays out. I don't know how long it goes.
Seems to be kind of a continuous thing, but it would take some individual manipulation of schedule to kind of say, when am I working toward this and when am I not?
Yeah.
But no, that's a good point. You said February to May. That's a 4-month stretch, and I think that's an appropriate length for a CrossFit season.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people can fall into the trap of, oh, I'm doing Wadapalooza, and then I'm doing the CrossFit Open, I'm doing Fittest of the Coast, wherever that falls in there, then I'm doing these World Fitness Project qualifiers. Your season can easily stretch to 8 or so months, and then you flip one page forward in the calendar and you have your qualifier for next year's Wadapalooza coming back up. Okay. So for each athlete, they have to pick which competitions do I want to focus on and which ones do I have to sacrifice, because ultimately you can't do everything. You can't overly compete, because then you risk subtracting that off season from your schedule, and we're going to talk about why that's so important today.
Yeah, you can't overly compete just because you're just going to tear. You're never building on anything, and you're just tearing up your body and mind.
Yeah.
Honestly, it could be more mind than anything.
I think they feed each other. But yeah, so you have your 4-month stretch, and within those 4 months, maybe you have 2 to 3 qualifiers, and you have 3-ish in-person competitions. I think the in-person competitions are probably the fixtures that you want to base your season around, because qualifiers honestly can kind of fall on either end of an off-season. You don't have to be peaked necessarily to compete in a qualifier, unless you know you are on the cusp of qualifying for whatever competition. That comes down to the specific athlete again too. Yeah,
exactly. It comes down to the specific athlete, because like you just said, now goal's Fittest of the Coast, and you're going to want to peak for it, but you might have to peak to get to Fittest of the Coast.
Right.
So that's going to be more of like, this is your season. Yeah, and then Fittest of the Coast is going to be 2 or 3 months down the road.
Right.
But you need to peak now, because you just want to punch your ticket to get there. And then, like you said, you have your elite athletes that are like, I'm going to qualify regardless of my skill level, and then they need to peak.
Yeah.
Exactly for that season. So it's really hard, actually, to dial it in.
Yeah, and it's like maybe for an athlete who needs to somewhat peak for the qualifier, and then I don't want to say remain peaked for the competition, but you're going to have a little bit of fluctuation in there. It's hard to stay peaked for that stretch of time, but you're going to peak for that qualifier. You're going to dip down into a little bit of a off-season-ish training cycle. Maybe it's not as fully leaning toward an off-season as we're going to discuss, but then you re-peak for that competition. But maybe that is your whole season right there, if you have to peak for those two things that are separated by 2 to 3 months.
Yeah.
And in that case, you have to really sacrifice some other competitions if you want to see substantial gains around your competitions.
Yeah. No, I like that layout. How would you say, because I know your season kind of got all discombobbled, but like,
a little bit,
since you're a cusp semi-finalist, so you've been trying to peak for, like, that's a good example, is like you peak for semifinals, and then your chance would be to like go to the game, like, you know, like you're trying to peak or for quarterfinals, and then you're doing quarterfinals, because you could reference last year, or was it 2 years ago that you really peaked for? Did you peak last year for quarterfinals?
I think I did, yeah.
Okay.
Even if I wasn't mentally
Yeah.
in it as much.
I mean,
like,
it's
my
been
training was tailored
it's
for
been
it.
so tough to
Yeah.
mentally peak for something that
Mhm.
when CrossFit doesn't even have a
Rip out the rug from under you.
yeah, exactly. But like you said, your training was for an online qualifier,
Mhm.
but you're a cusp semifinals athlete,
Yeah.
so you needed to peak there, and then you would have just been like, okay, I made it to semifinals. Now I need to figure out how I can structure this training to just get the best out of it.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna have to go through a deload after it and re-peak and then go through another taper. Like so that would be like you said. Like you're a perfect example of figuring out the athlete wants to qualify, and then if they do qualify, now they have to kind of just figure it out.
Yeah.
The next 2 months
Mhm.
of like what it takes the 8-week layout.
Yeah, depending on your athlete, there's going to be a lot of minutia to navigate between your qualifier and your competition.
Minutia.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Rich Froning isn't going to have to peak for a qualifier.
Exactly.
He's
Yep.
going to peak for the games. Different case for different people.
Yep.
But here now we're going to talk about the importance of our off season. So you compete for your 4 months, you finish your big competition, you take maybe 2 weeks to relax, to deload, whatever you want to call it, and then it comes time to assess your weaknesses. Now, how do we go about assessing weaknesses in CrossFit? You can really look at 3 things. You can look at your gymnastics, you can look at your weightlifting, you can look at your aerobic capacity.
Yep.
So let's talk about, I don't want to say an example of each, we can look at some examples. Say we have somebody who can clean and jerk 365, but they can't do a set of 5 ring muscle ups at their competition, and they struggle when it comes time to do the 20-minute conditioning bias
Mhm.
to test at whatever competition they just did. How would we structure an off season for that athlete?
They would barely touch a barbell. And then they would go on a bunch of gymnastics progressions.
Mhm.
And then obviously a bunch of tapered lifting stuff.
Yeah.
So you'd have to, or not lifting stuff, aerobic stuff. You'd have to look at what, like, are they sound like a bigger athlete? Are they probably going to have to do like echo bike intervals? Maybe not. They're probably going to have to run, move their body from A to B, and maybe do more longer paced rowing intervals. I bet they could, if they're clean and jerking 365, I bet they hammer down a echo bike.
Yeah.
Now, can they repeat it? Probably not, but I bet their calorie output's pretty insane.
Yeah, definitely. The wattage will be crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we would essentially treat this athlete like an endurance athlete in their off season,
Mhm.
and then we would add some gymnastics progressions, some skill work, maybe some movement economy work if they have to optimize some of their techniques, some of their performance in those areas. But that's kind of what I was starting to get at, is in your off season, you're less of a CrossFit athlete and more of a more specific, different sport athlete.
Mhm.
So this kind of guy would be an endurance athlete. Would
Mhm.
you kind of train him as if you were training for a half marathon, maybe, or maybe as if you're training for a partial triathlon, something like that?
Yeah. I think partial triathlon's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if you took another athlete who was the complete opposite of this person, he or she were very aerobically sound, and they are very proficient on the rings, on the rig, whatever gymnastics you're having to perform, but they struggle with the barbell, a heavy barbell, whether it's a 1-rep max event, or if it's a heavy barbell in a Metcon, say they have the aerobic capacity to throttle that Metcon, but
Yeah.
then they run into the barbell and it's, well, I can't do anything else because this barbell's sitting in front of me. I can't go and run my 400 meters until I pick up this barbell.
Hold on. I just got called 5 times.
Okay, so now how we treat our athlete who struggles with the barbell but is aerobically sound, gymnastically sound, is we essentially treat them like an Olympic weightlifting athlete.
Mhm.
They are lifting substantially multiple times throughout the week. Say they need to refine their technique in the Olympic lifts more than they need to get stronger. That's how we would bias their weightlifting. Or vice versa, if they can snatch 60 to 65% of their back squat, but their back squat, if this is a guy, is only 355 pounds, then we would look at just getting them stronger.
Yeah, just got to get stronger.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I definitely agree. I liked how you put in other terms, so you have your CrossFit athlete, but you're like, oh, we're going to train like an Olympic lifter. Oh, we're going to train like a triathlete, or we're going to train, like, depending on what your endurance is, mile runner, 5K runner, you know, like a rower. But you're putting it as in you're going to train in these other sport modalities, because CrossFit, when we've talked about this a bunch, you break it down. Why are we training CrossFit like its own specific burnout, like, well, just Metcon after Metcon after Metcon? And then you look at all these other sports, how they train, and it's like, oh, this actually makes sense. This layout makes sense. This has progression. Mm-hmm. So let's actually take the athlete out of it. Because like you said, when you break it down, there's really not as much as you think about in CrossFit.
No, a lot of the movement patterns overlap with others, and a lot of the skills you can develop in one domain really carry over into others.
Yep.
If you think about it, say you have an athlete who's trying to get stronger, and perhaps their lack of strength not only impacts them on the barbell, but it impacts their ability to finish a ring muscle up.
Yep.
You think improving their bench press or their close grip bench will A, not only get them stronger, but B, improve their ability to perform those ring muscle ups?
Right.
It definitely will.
And be repping out those dips like it's nothing after a nice progression on bench.
So if they have fine technique and movement economy on their ring muscle ups, why waste time and energy that you could spend getting stronger performing those ring muscle ups?
Yep.
If you can improve those with other things as well.
Yeah, and that's like ring muscle ups is a great example. Handstand push-ups is another great example. And it's like, okay, technique looks fine. You're just not strong.
Yeah.
So let's go lift.
Your strength, your muscular endurance, or your capacity, but even those things can partially be improved by just getting stronger.
Yep.
There's Paul Weber, who I watch a lot of his stuff on Instagram, talks about these studies that he reads where if the contraction is above 40% of your 1RM, getting stronger seems to improve your capacity at that weight than just practicing that weight.
Yep.
So why waste the time and energy of lifting a 40% barbell 100 times in a training session when you could lift 80% 20 times?
Right. And then you're going to get stronger. So cycling that barbell went from being 40% in the workout to now it's 30%.
Yeah.
Like, and that's Fred Duncan, I put a lot of his stuff out, and his is like speed endurance.
Mm-hmm.
So you get faster, and for even like a mile runner, it's like, all right, we'll have them actually sprint, and then everything else is going to also be faster because now they're working at a less intensity, and they're able to output that longer because it's less grueling on their body.
Yeah.
Now, if they're trying to run a 800 or a mile in under 4 minutes for the mile, and they sprint at like a 14-second 100, it's like, oh, get them down to 12 seconds. Now they're going to be able to just output that at a nice percentage. And it's the same thing as with lifting. Like, you just got to look at it as if you are stronger or more explosive, it's going to carry over into endurance, especially when you start even microdosing the endurance in prepping up for the competitions and stuff.
Then you talk about taking people through these grueling training sessions when you could just take a fraction of that and make their fraction better so that it can spread across those longer form, those more grueling scenarios.
Yep.
Like that makes me talk about what is interference looking like in our off season, this interference effect. If you have somebody who, for example, is lacking in strength, their conditioning is going to be very minimal in their off season because the more conditioning they do, especially high intensity conditioning, it's going to impede their ability to strength train, at least at a high performance threshold.
Yeah, exactly.
If you have somebody, even as something as simple as rowing repeats, if you're doing 500-meter rowing intervals and you're doing 10 sets of that, that's going to not only just beat you up mentally, but it's also going to deplete the glycogen in your muscles. You come back to train the next day. Sure, you can get through a training session, but you're not moving that barbell as fast as you need to make the proper neural adaptations, and you're really just going to be going through the motions.
Yep.
And if you're going through the motions, you are just practicing a movement that you've already practiced a million times because it's CrossFit and you did 200 thrusters in a workout last week.
Yep, did 200 thrusters, rode a 5K. All right, what are we focusing on here?
Yeah. So if we take somebody like your athlete who needs to prioritize their strength training, we will prioritize their strength training and then reduce that conditioning. So what does a reduced conditioning look like for a CrossFit athlete? I wouldn't say it's doing nothing. I've experimented with doing nothing. It doesn't necessarily impede anything because then once your season starts again, you can re-implement your conditioning. And depending on the athlete, they can reacquire their aerobic capacity within a month, maybe 6 weeks. If you plan your taper back into the season, or reverse taper, if you plan your acclimation back into your season properly, you can get that done fine. But a lot of CrossFit athletes, based on how they're used to feeling, are going to feel gross if they're not doing cardio consistently.
Yep.
So, zone 2, accumulate 2 to 3 hours of zone 2 throughout your week. That could be 30-minute chunks, 4 to 5 times a week. And then if you want to sprinkle in some 10 to 15 minutes of intensity, maybe you want to jump in and do, I hate saying doing Metcons with friends, but I mean, I don't think you're ever going to stop. I don't think you're ever going to stop a CrossFit athlete from doing a Metcon for fun.
Exactly.
And if you want to do that once or twice a week, that's
it gives
not
them
going
that
to hurt.
It gives them that itch to, like, the itch back. Like,
Yeah.
oh, that felt good.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, and it gives them that itch back, and it gives them that confidence back. It's like, okay, I can still do this.
Oh, I haven't
Because
lost
they're not
it.
exactly. They're gonna think like, ooh, I lost it. They're like, okay, I can still do this.
Yeah.
And it might not feel the greatest like when they're peaked and everything, but at least they'll be like, all right, I can hang still.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a total piece of crap because I haven't been doing any endurance or high intensity. So yeah, it just mentally, from the mental side of things, I think it's the best to still sprinkle in a Metcon, and especially a Metcon with friends always helps.
Yes.
It's a community-driven sport, really.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah, and then if you have the opposite type of athlete, one who doesn't need to get stronger but needs to really improve their aerobic capacity, they probably need to improve their gymnastics capacity too. But I kind of place that in a separate bin from your strength and conditioning dichotomy.
Yeah.
Because gymnastics, you can almost treat that as its own little thing.
Yeah.
And then you go and you're like, okay, now do I pick my strength or my conditioning?
Yep.
But gymnastics aside, you have your athlete who needs to prioritize their conditioning. And what do we think about them potentially losing strength as they do hours of conditioning work throughout the week, even hours on a single day based on how intense that work is? And Curt talked about it, just having that little bit of strength training throughout the week. Maybe we're hitting a few singles this day,
Yeah.
a few singles of something else that day. We're just pretty much maintaining movement patterns.
Yep.
And we're maintaining whatever neural adaptations you made. Because if you have a stronger athlete, they're likely already pretty big. They don't need to be doing a 4 sets of 8 back squat twice a week.
Yeah, that's the last thing they need to be doing.
That's going to make their legs bigger, and then all that juice that they spend lifting really makes their conditioning work
Not
less
only
useful.
makes their legs bigger, like you said, they lose all that juice, and now they're just moving a bigger body even more. It's
Uh-huh.
like, well,
Exactly.
that's less efficient.
Yeah, so if you were doing 4x8 at, 65% of your back squat, do 8 singles at, it doesn't even have to be heavy. It could be like 75 to 85%.
Yep.
Move it fast and be done with it.
And you'll maintain.
Yeah.
People do not realize strength, probably the hardest thing to build, but once you have it, wow, can you maintain
Yeah.
it? It's incredible. But now gaining that, so like you get to 450 back squat and you're like, wow, I need a 470. That's gonna suck. Like that's gonna take way more effort than you'd like it to.
Yeah. But
you doing this and I'm gonna go focus on conditioning. You come back, you probably squat 440.
Mm-hmm.
You might even squat still 450.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to really lose it as long as you just threw it in there.
Yeah,
if you did those 8 singles at 85%, I bet if you did that once a week, and you could not even change it in progressive overload. We'd like to, just because that's how we like to program things. But if you were just 8 singles, 85%, 75 to 85% every week for 8 weeks, and just focus on conditioning, I bet your back squat doesn't change.
Yeah, agreed.
I bet
If it does, take 6 weeks to reacclimate to your season, and my gosh, you're strong again.
Right? Exactly. Oh my gosh. Exactly. It could take 4 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, you want a bigger outline so you can put it on right, but like, I mean, they just don't realize. People don't realize how it might feel like it goes away quickly, but it really doesn't. Like, it's there. It's once you get that, and it's same with your. I mean, you're the conditioning guru,
Mm-hmm.
And has your conditioning left?
No.
And how often do you touch it?
Now, I'm prepping for.
Well, you're
now,
prepping
so-
for Metcon, but like, say we were talking 2 months ago.
Oh, I was doing 30 to 40 minutes of zone 2, 3 to 4 times a week.
Yep.
And then within 2 weeks of reintroducing more CrossFit specific things and more CrossFit specific conditioning.
Well, how well did you do on that qualifier?
Which one?
The fitness project, right? It had 5 of them.
That was right after Fittest of the Coast.
Okay, which
Or
one
it
was?
Or it was right after the Open. I can't remember.
Which one did you did? You surprisingly just did really well on. Wasn't it? Or was it It was a CrossFit. Was it semifinals?
I can't remember. I didn't do.
You were in
semifinals.
like third the first day.
Oh, that was more fitness project.
Okay, yeah.
I was in like season type shape though, because we came off of Fittest of the Coast and the Open
I guess.
recently.
Yeah, but you're coming off of a competition.
But yeah, I didn't care about performers that were fitness project, but I just did it. I'm like, I guess I'm in pretty good shape right now.
Yeah. I mean, think about Fittest of the Coast qualifier. You probably didn't touch a Metcon.
I didn't. The first Fittest the Coast qualifier, it was an AMRAP of rowing, wall balls, and dumbbell snatches. I hadn't done a Metcon in 6 weeks.
Yeah. And you placed perfectly fine.
Oh yeah, I did fine. I felt like crap after.
Well,
and there's nothing wrong with feeling like crap.
Everyone's
after
gonna, they're gonna feel like crap after, and like that's another like, oh, I'm so out of shape, I feel like crap. It's like, no, your body's just not used to this at all right now, and it's gonna come back like, but it's still even maintained.
Yeah,
you did great on that workout.
And what's more interesting about that workout is that was before I refined my approach to conditioning in an off-season cycle. Mm-hmm. So not only was I not doing Metcons or high-intensity conditioning, I also wasn't doing the Zone 2 that I was just talking about.
You were pretty much doing
I was doing zero cardio whatsoever.
Yeah, so that was even more of a shock to your body, and you still did fine.
Yeah. Yeah, so retention of your abilities, if you've already developed them properly, is a really big thing that you need to understand. Like, not understand, but just acknowledge.
Just acknowledge it.
Yeah, it's going to be there. Don't worry about losing things. And that brings me into my next topic is you don't have to be good at everything all the time. That is essentially how you create this perpetual middle-class athlete. Mm-hmm. Now, what is a middle-class athlete is going to depend on the person and their aspirations. But if you look at, like we were just talking about how my usual goal is to push for what used to be the in-person semifinals. Now it's online and there's a little bit less incentive to push for it. But when that was the case, I, in my opinion, was the middle-class athlete because I couldn't reach that goal. I was in the echelon just beneath that goal.
People are going to hate that you just called yourself a middle-class athlete.
I told you, it depends on the perspective of the person.
I know.
So if you are someone...
But I agree. You're comparing yourself to CrossFit Games athletes because
right.
That's where you were aspiring to be.
Yeah.
And you were middle class because of weightlifting.
Now, yeah, exactly. Now, if you, back in the old layout, whenever the quarterfinals was the top 10% and you were consistently placing in 13 to 15%, you would consider yourself, based on your goals, the middle-class athlete.
Yep.
And by trying to be good at everything all the time, about the only thing you can improve is your aerobic capacity, because that's really going to improve a lot of times regardless of what you're doing, as long as you're doing a lot of something.
Yeah.
And for a lot of athletes, especially in CrossFit, you have aerobic capacity because of what you do all the time.
You constantly do 20-minute workouts.
And by
zone 3, zone 4.
And by doing those workouts, at a certain point, once you are 3-ish years probably, I'd say, into the sport, you're probably going to cap out your gains in your weakness areas by that you can attain through those CrossFit style workouts, those Metcons. Yep. In order to keep improving in those areas that you don't already have a high set point with, you need to step away from those Metcons and just say, what do I need to improve?
Yes.
And I'm going to improve those specifically and take a break from the things that I already know I can do. Otherwise, I'm going to be stuck in that middle class forever because, sure, I'm getting better at breathing, but it's not very difficult to breathe with a 400-pound clean on your front rack, but you just can't stand it up.
Yep. Yeah.
Who cares how fast you can do burpee box jump overs when you got to do
when you have to do
30 shoulder to overhead at 225 before that. Yeah,
exactly. And like you said, a lot of these athletes see a lot of success in the 3 to 4 years, and like some could argue that the general, I guess, layout is decent at that, but you're just going to see gains no matter what. But you're learning a bunch of skills, so I don't even hate it as a new athlete that that's the only thing you focus on, because there's so many things going on in CrossFit, and you might not even know your true weaknesses yet. I mean, there's going to be the little things that eat you up that are skill-based. But after, like you said, after that 4 years is pretty much where you're like, all right, now I see what I suck at.
I'm pretty much where I can be by just doing CrossFit.
Yes.
Now I need to become... Even though it defeats the purpose of CrossFit, I need to be more specialized, at least in my training, so that when I become more generalized, my specific elements can all keep up with what I'm already good at, what I already genetically have a predisposition to improve well at, or to perform well at.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's a hard pill for the athletes to swallow, though.
And it feels like you're stepping away from your sport. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It feels like you're stepping away from your sport, but every sport has to step away from their sport. I mean, we talked about it last week, is if you're not going to step away from your sport, you're just going to overuse, burnout, injury, more than likely. I mean, think about, we've talked about it recently, is the chest to bar volume.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, yeah.
Okay, if you don't step away from the sport and you're constantly just competing and you're doing 200, 100 chest to bar pull-ups weekly, and if you're definitely a bigger athlete, see ya. No wonder your shoulders are absolutely killing you. Like, no, go ahead and get in your off season and do some strict pull-ups.
Tell me how your surgery goes.
Yeah, exactly. Tell me how your surgery goes. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you're somebody who feels, or we analyze or we assess your performance and your weaknesses, and we say, oh, you need to get stronger at pulling, we're doing strict weighted pull-ups if that's what you're capable of doing, and we can progress that. Exactly. Or if it's an endurance problem, you're doing strict unweighted or banded pull-ups, just accumulating that volume.
Strict volume, though.
Yeah. And we're not going to tear apart your shoulders, because 300 chest to bar a week will tear up your shoulders. And that many actually, like, regardless of your size, is going to destroy you.
I mean, I was dumb to this all before, too. Like, I mean, when I first started, it was just Metcon. I mean, the first probably 4 years of me training was that way. I mean, but you get bit by this CrossFit bug, and you're like, this is awesome. Like, this is a drug I love taking. It's put me in that high endorphins. I'm doing the cool stuff all the time. I'm getting upside down. I'm handstand walking. I'm doing GHD sit-ups. I'm doing ring muscle ups. I'm doing chest bar pull-ups. And then you hit that point, and you're like, I am not gaining anything, and my body is just deteriorating.
Yes.
It's like, oh, no wonder I have a nagging injury every week, and it's something new. It's because I want to do all the sexy stuff and the feel good stuff, but I'm not taking time to actually develop my strength in the areas that I need, or the aerobic capacity that I need, by just sitting on a rower for an hour. Yeah.
Sorry.
Which, I mean, and then when I started doing the 500 repeats, because I'm the opposite of you, I need the other end. Did it suck? Yeah. Did I get a lot better? Yeah, I got a lot better. And it's a hard pill to swallow, because you're not going to be able to sit here and just do Metcon every day with muscle ups and the cool stuff. You're going to actually just have to be boring and sit on a rower for 7 sets, or be boring and back squat and lift today and leave.
Yeah. That's the big thing, and then leave afterward. You don't stick around and do other things. You are lifting, and you're letting your body adapt to that specific thing, and that only.
Your friend doesn't walk in the gym and be like, hey, I'm doing this thing. Like, might as well hop in. It's like, no, you definitely shouldn't hop in. Like, and I still get athletes, and it's so hard. I understand. But, like, if your true goals are to make it to this level, you're going to have to you really have to say no to things. Like, now, if it's not your true goals, and you're like, I do want to get better, and then your friend walks in, and they're like, you want to do this workout with me? Have some fun with your friend. That's fine. But if your true goals are to get better at this specific sport, you got to go get better at the specific movements in your off season, and not just kill yourself doing the sport.
Yeah, and part of that is doing less, because you were just talking about, you like doing all the party tricks, you like doing all the cool stuff, and you like doing a lot of it. And part of CrossFit, part of what CrossFit instills in people mentally, is this drive to work hard, almost to a fault, almost to your own body's detriment.
Yes.
And that ends up defeating the purpose of a lot of your, underline this, training.
Yep.
We're not exercising, we're not working out, we're training, especially when we're prepping for competition, or we're a competitive athlete working in the off season. We're looking to recover as hard as we train, and a lot of these Metcons done ad nauseum, done over and over and over, not only impede your ability to recover, but you're operating consistently at 65% gas in the tank whenever you need 90 to 100 to really make appreciable gains, to feel like you are pushing your weaknesses with enough intensity to improve those specific areas.
Yeah, if you're not entering each training session with at least 85% or up intensity, I mean, you might as well just go rest and recover another day and then hit it, because like you said, if you're just trying at 65%, now we're just going to get our heart rate better. We're going to get better at breathing again a little bit, just because we're moving more. Yeah. And that's not what we want. We want to get strong. We want to get explosive. We want to get higher intensity on the intervals. And you cannot do that. That's why our rests become bigger in this type of training too. And who hates to rest? A CrossFitter. You put, dude, I put a 2-minute rest up there. Now, it depends on what the work, maybe if it was a 5-minute all out and then they got 2 minutes, they're like, yeah, it feels short. But a lot of, like, when we lift, dude, I'll put 3 minutes. I was back squats, I think it was like 2 weeks ago. It was like 3 minutes in between each lift, and people are like, well, can I just back squat again? No. I was like, you should probably be taking 5 minutes. We're working at 85%, 90%. Like, you should probably be taking 5 minutes almost between these sets, because now we're just building strength and endurance, and I don't want that. I want you to build strength.
Yeah, the point is to recover so you can repeat your efforts
at maximum power output. Yeah. Because if you're not competing at maximum power output, now we're just gaining endurance again.
You're like, like you said, if you're at that 85 to 90% and you're just trying to turn around too quickly, you're testing your ability to almost cheat the system. You're like, how well can I manipulate my body to stand up with whatever weight is on top of me, and instead of trying to drive that weight and move it quickly and get stronger.
And actually make the right adaptations. Yeah. It's like, oh, no, I just moved my body in a weird way.
You're learning how to do the worm with a barbell on your back.
Yep, exactly. It's like, no, I want these all to be nice, pretty, powerful reps.
We're not looking to survive the work, which is what we often fall into with these long 2 to 3 hours of high-intensity CrossFit. We're looking to thrive and improve in these sessions. Yeah. And that's essentially what it comes down to.
Yeah, like you've put in, and we said you're probably getting those athletes that have been doing this for 3 to 4 years now, and they're like, oh, I'm not making any gains, so now we want to specialize. You've done the hard work. We know you can suffer. Yeah. Like you've stuck around for 4 years. You can suffer all day. You don't need to do that anymore. Let's take a step back, and we'll still let you suffer here or there, but let's take a step back and really focus on what you stink at.
Yeah, and you look at Instagram all the time, you see a lot of those gurus who talk about working hard at all costs, and there's definitely a demographic that can benefit from that kind of message.
Yes.
But if you're a competitive CrossFit athlete who has existed in the sport,
unfollow David Goggins.
I wasn't going to say it today.
I'll say it.
But yeah, if you are...
Love the guy. Stud.
Yeah.
I mean, mentally awesome. And like you said, this is great for probably a lot of the general public.
97% of people. Yeah.
But you're not that 97%. No, you've done hard work for 4 years.
You've proven that you have the mindset that you need to be competitive and to want to excel in this sport. Now it's a matter of showing the toughness that it takes to step back from wanting to do everything all the time.
Show your David Goggins and that you're disciplined and not doing the extra stuff, because you know that's not going to help you. Yeah, it's just hard pills to swallow all around. I've said that probably 1,000 times this podcast, but it's true.
But what's going to be amazing is if you adopt some of those practices and if you implement some of those approaches into your off-season training, after a week or two, you're going to say, wow, I feel way better than I usually do. Yep. And of course, once we get back into the season, maybe some of those feelings will return. We can talk in a later installment about what in-season training might look like and how you might fluctuate that depending on the person and what their season looks like.
Yes.
But in your off-season, the more often you feel fresh, the better.
Yep. Yeah, the more often you come into the gym, you're like, oh, I feel good today. It's like, that's what I want. Because I want this session to be awesome. Yeah. I want you to be at 90%, 100%, just ripping through these intervals or ripping through these back squats or power cleans, and I want them floating.
And you finish the last one, you're like, I still have a little gas to take. Maybe I should do more. Do not do more.
Exactly.
Stop
it's like,
right
well,
there.
that's right. Yeah, you get into that. Oh, well, I'll just go for a max today. It's like, no. We're doing this for a reason. Stop.
Oh, eight intervals felt easy. I'm gonna do 12.
I'll do 12. Oh. Yeah. And then by the 12th one, you're like, all right, that was it because I died. It's like, no, that's not it. That's not what I wanted. And like every day isn't gonna feel great either. You're still gonna come in and that 85% is gonna feel like 1,000,000 pounds. It's just like, I mean, that's a process of this sport and lifting. I mean, look at any of the power lifters or strongman, and that's just their specific thing. I guarantee they walk into the day and it's like 90%. They're like, that felt like 110, and I mean that's just the way. And that's where recovery comes into such key too. Like, well, how did you sleep? How did you eat? How did you do this? It's your off season. That doesn't mean the off season, it's like, all right, dial in your nutrition, dial in your sleep, because now we're making gains.
Yeah.
I mean, and you need it in season too, but take your 2 weeks, like you said, after your competition, eat whatever you want, go have fun. And does it have to be insanely strict? No. In your off season, but you start having to, like, I got to hit these protein targets for sure. I got to hit this sleep target for sure. And everything kind of will dial in, but like, you feel sluggish, eat more. Yeah. Like, you don't have to measure, but you got to dial it in still a little bit if you want to make these gains that you so-called want to.
Yeah, and that comes bundled with that idea of trying to do less in the off season. Is you're prioritizing your recovery. So with that comes your sleep, your food. Yep. You're trying to work as hard outside of the gym as you are inside. Yes. So if you're spending more time outside of the gym, take some of those efforts you would put in your training and put them into those other elements.
Yes. It's Cole Sager. I just listened to a podcast, and he was talking about his off season. When he was truly training hard, and just how, I mean, this is extreme example, but he's been one of the best CrossFit Games athletes
for a long time.
Yeah. Top 10, I don't know, for multiple times. I don't know the exact numbers, but he's like, it was so crazy how in recovery he'd be like, his family would want to go on a hike, and he'd be like, I don't think I can.
Yeah.
Because I can't exert this energy. My kids want picked up, and he's like, I'd pick them up, but in my head, I'm like, I'm exerting energy. I have to hit 3x3 at 85% back squats later today, and I'm tossing my kid around.
Yeah.
He's like, and now he's not nearly as competitive, and he was saying like how relieving it is that he's like, I can go for these, I can lift up my kid without having these thoughts. He's like, I don't want those thoughts. He's like, I still lift up my kid. He's a great human, one of the best of all time, but he's like, it's just crazy how recovery, and that's how he was so elite. His mind was so much on recovery and just being fresh for every single session he was going to have. And that's what people also don't realize in the off season. What it takes is like, you got to dial in and put all that effort outside of being the work in this wall is typically easy for you. It's the work outside of this wall also that's going to be very hard for you.
You're trying to do everything in your power outside of your gym to improve your ability to perform inside of the gym. And it's as difficult of a task as the training itself, because the training is fun, the other stuff is kind of a chore.
I have to cook chicken breast right now and eat this rice or potato, or I could DoorDash this.
And like you said, it's a matter of thinking about all those things too. Should I be standing for this long? There's a weird element
Isn't
to
it
where
crazy?
standing
And I know,
for an hour actually wears you down a little bit.
I know you dial into this. You kind of have that like Cole Sager mindset. It's like, oh, this is like, which is great because I mean you need it, but like you do think about
people give you some side eyes whenever you communicate it out loud.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I mean, people are gonna think you're nuts, but it's so true. It's like, oh, I just stood for an hour. You probably have 3 by something back squats later at a stupid percentage, and you're like, I didn't want to wake up. My alarm went off at 4 a.m. That stunk today because I have a big session today, and like, I mean, and so you probably tried to get to bed. I mean, yesterday was a holiday, but you still probably were like, all right, I got to get to sleep. And you're trying to prioritize it. Life's crazy. You're not gonna it's never going to be perfect, but you got to try to get it near there.
You got to control what you can.
It's
going to be, don't try to over control, because then it's easy to get, I don't know what the word I want to use is. There's a certain element of paranoia that becomes into the fold, whereas if you
paranoid?
I try to wear a cool face.
Oh, you do? You wear one of the coolest faces ever.
I keep it on the inside. Inside, like, people are screaming and playing in pots and pans.
Yeah, but that's like you are a great example for everyone because you're a high-end athlete, and you have these thoughts too, and you do display it as this, that, but like everyone has these thoughts of craziness, and like they're gonna come through. Now it's just like control what you can control, and then just alter it the way you can. Life's gonna be crazy. It's never gonna be perfect, but do the best you can to get that fatigue or get that recovery. Like I'm by any means not saying don't pick up your kid, because that matters more than any of it. And like that's what Cole would also say. But I'm saying those thoughts are gonna process when you're trying to get into that high. Oh, I didn't get my sleep today. I didn't do this. I need that. It's like you do, but also you need to manage your stress. Because your stress is gonna tear you a new one too. Like that management is probably almost more than managing your sleep. Now it can snowball effect. You don't get sleep, you're gonna be stressed, this, that, but you need to manage your stress, number one, because that's just gonna tank you mentally more than anything.
That's an interesting thing to think about too, because if you know you were suboptimal about some recovery aspect in a given day, and you're like, crap, and you start stressing over that, are you adding extra?
You're just adding extra stress.
Adding extra fuel to the fire you don't want to be burning inside of you.
One of my favorite quotes that people hate is, "It is what it is." I live by "it is what it is." That happened 10 minutes ago. I cannot.
You can't change
that
it.
happened 10 minutes ago. It is what it is. And they're like, well, what if you just say, "Oh, it is what it is"? I don't mean it like that. That is what it is. Now, what can I do to make an adjustment?
Control
to
what's ahead of you.
Exactly. Yeah, I pretty much had a football coach tell me that, and it was like life changing. And then he got me into like the stoic stuff. Coach Roper, great guy. It was a football game. I was a sophomore, 2 fumbles first half. I was like, this is not going well for me. And at halftime, he's like, dude, you can't. What are you going to do now? Because that happened. What are you going to do now? And I ended up having one of the better games my sophomore year in that second half. And it's just like, that just like churned me for life. It's like, man, it is what it is.
See,
like, I can't do anything about that. I have to, what can I focus on now that is going to excel me, because that happened.
That's good coaching too, because instead of getting on you for making mistakes, he allowed you to improve your performance moving forward.
Exactly. Yeah, he could have been like, "You suck. You need to hold on to the ball this way, this, and all he said was, "Me, this is what it is. I have faith in you. You're going back in."
Yeah, because a lot of athletes, they make those mistakes, and then all of their actions, but after that point, are meant to remedy what already happened, and that's where more mistakes might come from. There's no way to remedy what you already did.
Yep, there's no way to remedy what you already did. Is perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I like that.
All right, take your off seasons.
Yes, take your off seasons.
Eat, recover.
Yes.
You're working hard for a little bit, not all the time.
Yes, and let your coach talk to somebody. Let your coach guide you through it too.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what coaches and we're here for. We're here for questions. You hammer us with them, shoot us a message. We'll reply. We love to talk you through that type of off-season mentality. Is huge in this sport specifically, because it's done so wrong.
Yeah,
other sports are done way more, still not right, but way more correct than CrossFit's off season.
CrossFit can take some pointers from the way that those other sports treat those off seasons.
Yes.
I always tell people, do NFL players play tackle football year round? They do not. Like
you said this the other day, they don't even play tackle football barely in season.
No, they play it once a week.
Exactly.
And then during the week it's all football and shorts.
Yep. It's like, oh, we're finding skills. We're keeping our bodies right. We're lifting in season and maintaining our joints. It's like no, tackle football every single day. It's like, what? Sunday you're gonna die.
Train for your sport. Don't play sport to prepare for sport.
Yes.
That's maybe too simple of an analogy.
Yeah, I could see where you're getting with the too simple, but it's pretty much especially once you get into the higher level.
Yes.
Like as kids, go play.
Yes.
Be creative and play the sport, play it differently. But once you're getting sport specific and stuff like that, all right, dial it in.
Yep. All right. Deuces.